prose as well as grammar. I have also recently joined as a house officer in the Department of Physiology at Cooper Hospital itself.
Like the what inspired you to pursue an MBA at this stage of your career?
So when I entered MBBS, it was I was a young child, and at that time it was a lot of pressure from the society in terms of if you're scoring good marks, you should go into an MBBS. You cleared your NEET exam, you should go into MBBS. Why are you here? And I mean, why are you not pursuing it? So that was what got me into it. But during the course of my MBBS, I actually joined the marketing committee, and I was very highly influenced by it. I realized that that is something that I am good at, and that is something that I wish to do in the future as well. So that is why I chose an MBA. Plus, my father has a pharmaceutical company himself. And I believe that if I combine my knowledge of MBBS with the knowledge that I would gain through a PGP or an MBA program, I feel that I would be able to deliver a lot more and help his company grow as well, because I understand what the end consumers of a pharmaceutical company would want, that is the patients and the doctors prescribing the drugs. So I believe that with my perspective, I can actually create a unique skill set that would help me further my career.
Please keep asking questions because that's the only way you will learn. Better than giving interviews. Taking interviews is what's going to help you.
Can you tell me about any challenging project or any work you have worked on and the outcome of it?
So the most challenging thing that I had to deal with during the course of my MBBS was actually during my internship. We had our rural posting, wherein we have to stay in a village ourselves as practicing doctors. And at like I think 12 a.m., a patient came in with severe breathlessness. And where we were staying, we didn't have a lot of amenities. We didn't even have an ECG machine. All we had was an SpO2 monitor and a colleague of mine, and maybe like an oxygen supply and an IV line. That's literally all we had. So managing that patient, and the ambulance also would have been available only in the morning because he had to go to a higher hospital. We didn't have an option to treat him there. So the biggest challenge we had was keeping him alive through the night. But yeah, we basically did our clinical diagnosis. We made our own shifts where we stayed up to 2 hours monitoring the patient, taking care of the patient, and then at 8 a.m. the ambulance came, took the patient away. I know it sounds like we're just doing our job, but for someone who has just read theoretical knowledge for 4.5 years and straight off gone into the field to work and is alone with no seniors, that was a big challenge that I feel I overcame, and I'm very proud of it.
Uh, I so a follow up on what you just mentioned. Now, having lived through that, what do you think are the changes that should probably be in place in areas such as that, so that hopefully no new people interning in those places would have to go through all of this just to, wait for an ambulance until early morning?
Okay, so the first thing that I believe should be done is at least provide basic amenities for diagnosis so that you don't need an ambulance for every small thing. Maybe that patient could have just had acidity, which was causing him chest pain, leading to breathlessness. We would never know that. Maybe it was his liver that had failed. Maybe it was his heart that had failed. So even if we had a basic ECG machine in place, it would have been very helpful in uh, helping us actually to enable a proper patient management. Other than that, obviously, a ready ambulance in hand is very important, especially when you know that what the station that you are at is just a PHC. It's not a hospital. It's literally just a clinic where you can't treat difficult cases. But it is the only thing that is accessible to a lot of people in the middle of the night. So, providing a basic ambulance service, the basic life support system in place. There was nothing. There were no suture materials also. Now, these are things that do not require a lot of investment from the part of the government. But and it is not that it's not. They are not aware of the fact that it's not in place. But because the allocation of resources is mostly done to the metropolitan cities where the population is much larger and the revenue is coming out much faster, these places tend to get ignored. So maybe if there was a direction of funds towards these places to provide better facilities here, that would be a huge help to the people living there as well as the doctors practicing there.
Okay. And, also, like you mentioned that you have been doing a lot of NGO work, right? So what led you into that direction like so early on, and like what makes you still want to do it?
So when I entered MBBS, I was a novice to these areas, but we had this thing called community posting. It's community medicine posting. So as a part of these postings, through the third year of our college itself, in a 5.5 year course for perspective, we are made to go to the houses of people living in small stalls. And we actually have to ask them about what their incomes are, what their expenditures are, what are the problems that they are facing, not just health problems, but even in terms of the water supply that they have, what methods of water storage that they're using, the food that they're having, what nutritional value is present in the food that they're actually consuming, because all these factors contribute to the overall health of an individual. And that is when people actually, first of all, they don't know about a lot of healthy practices. And second, even if they do know, they don't tend to implement it. And they don't have a lot of support to support, even though it might seem that the country is doing well. A lot of these people are actually not doing well in terms of economy. So that is when I thought that even if I cannot financially contribute to them as a student, maybe if I can actually just create a sort of awareness as to what they can do with the resources that they have to improve their lifestyle or to improve their health, that would be something that's very useful. So that community medicine posting actually created an impact on me, which is why I continue to do what I'm doing.
You mentioned you teach English language now, correct?
Yes.
Uh, so like what made you, like considering you've done an MBBS, probably teaching something like bio or sciences would have been the obvious choice, right? So why did you
Yes.
pick English language as a subject that you wanted to teach children?
Simply because there was an opening for an English language teacher and there was already a biology teacher in the school. That's literally the only reason. As soon as a biology teacher leaves, I'd be more than happy to switch over to that side.
Okay, okay, okay. Uh,
Snigdha, I remember you mentioned about some management committee in your MBBS. What did you do over there?
So I was the head of public relations and marketing committee as a part of my college council. So as a part of the committee, we were responsible for gathering sponsorships that for the cultural and academic festivals. So we actually managed to get sponsorship from companies like SBI Life Insurance, Bajaj Finance, Khadi India, which are not mainstream medical companies, but we still managed to convince them about their benefits to the medical community and how their company would actually benefit from the footfall in the festival. We also had a collaborative event, which I single-handedly coordinated. That's something that I'm actually taking very proud of. There's this company called Pocket Aces, which is the company behind this very famous streaming platform called Filter Copy. So we actually had a collaborative event with them where they came to promote their show and they promoted our festival on their Instagram profile and through their channels. And other than that, there were also a lot of celebrities that came in for the academic as well as cultural festivals. So we were the ones who were coordinating with them, were responsible for them throughout the process of the festival.
Do you have any idea, Sita, why Nestle was called the baby killer?
Sorry,
You've heard of Nestle?
heard of?
Nestle, the company Nestle, food
Ne-
giant.
I
Nestle.
your voice is not clear. I'm not able to make out what you're saying.
Nestle. Nestle.
Nestle. Yes, Nestle. Yes.
Nestle was called baby killers. Do you have any idea why?
I'm not sure, but I think it was something to do with the baby food that they were producing, the milk, the breast milk substitute that they were manufacturing. It was mostly just sugar. There was this whole controversy about how the nutritional value in the American manufacturing of the same brand was different from the one in India. I am not sure if that was the reason why they were termed the baby killer, but there was this controversy that had come up in picture.
Is it true that the thing that you have to do in villages is because the villagers can't question your decision, which they can if you are in a city?
Sorry, I didn't get your question properly.
I'm saying that is it true that you are given a stint in the village as a young doctor because
Hmm.
villagers are not that well educated, so they can't question your decisions regarding the medication that you give them?
I don't believe so because even amongst the villagers, Google is now a thing that is always in handy for them. So everyone questions our decisions. It's not that they are very happy with whatever we give them. Most of them actually want us to give them injections even if they don't need it. They tend to come to us saying that, okay, we have a pain part of the body that is paining. Give us an injection, even if it can be solved by a simple paracetamol or a simple ibuprofen. They would want an injectable because that is what they believe is correct for them. Also, they have their own notions about Ayurveda and other uh, alternate therapies, which I know work. I know that there are therapies in place, there are books and courses for them because they work, but they are not studied properly in these places. And then there are rumors that are passed around about it, which is why they tend to question us more about our treatment plans than a person in a city would. So that is not true. I think the reason why they actually station us is so that we get better exposure. So normally, after you're done with your MBBS, after you're done with your curriculum, people tend to prefer to stay in the metropolitan city because they have more financial stability over here, because they have more resources over here, just for the maintenance of a better lifestyle. And that is why they don't prefer going there. As a young doctor, sensitizing us to that situation is important because if we are not stationed in these places, we never know that the problems that these people go through and the things that they have to actually work towards. As doctors, the things that we have to work towards and the problems that the patients go through in these situations. So that is the reason why they actually station us, and not because the villagers cannot question us.
So you said that you got sensitized because you had to work in the rural setup and you had to go in the job.
Yes.
But I don't think that is the norm in engineering or in MBA. So do you think that there should be something similar where these school graduates or engineers they should go and work in the rural area so that they are also sensitive to the
Um,
actual situation in our country?
So it depends in the on the field that they're working in. So if you're talking about like an IT engineer who is mostly working with computers, I don't think that it would create a lot of difference if the person actually went to a village and saw the situation or not. But if there is someone working in a managerial position who has to allocate funds and is probably choosing different NGOs that the company can collaborate with, sorry, not cooperate, collaborate with. In that situation, maybe the company actually the manager probably just goes for a site visit himself, does that for a few days, that could create a different impact.
Yeah, I'm just asking in terms of sensitization to the realities of our country rather than just running after money and riches.
If that is
Do
the
you think every youngster should go and spend some time in the villages or the stalls and stuff so that they are more sensitive to what are the privileges that they are enjoying which others are maybe not enjoying?
I believe yes. It's not necessary for them to specifically go and live there for a month like we did. But even if they just have this thing where they go and visit the houses of the people who are making the masses of our population, or if they go to the villages for a site visit and just interact with them, most of them are very cordial and most of them are more than happy to tell what their problems are, they're more than happy to share. So that would definitely create a perspective, create a better insight.
Do you have some idea about process and product patents?
Sorry,
Do you have any idea about process and product patents in medicine?
patent, process and product patent. Was there something after that?
Wait,
Hello?
yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
I'm saying that you have some idea about product and process patent.
Product and process patent. So I'm not from the corporate background and from the commercial background, so I'm not exactly sure about this. But by what I understand, if there is a company that has built something, whether it's a drug, if it's a software, they have the right to patent it. So when you patent something, you have the sole authority to manufacture and market it. And you can obviously sell the patent to different companies if you want to ask them to, if you want to expand the business to different sectors as well, if you want other companies to work on the same thing, that can be done. I know that when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, drug, when it is newly introduced, the introducing company holds a patent for about 20 years, after which they have to release their patent. It has to become a branded generic drug. It cannot stay a branded drug.
Yeah, so product patent is where you cannot make the final product as it exists, and process patent is where you can use a different process to make the final product as the patent holder has.
Okay.
So if you have product patent, then you cannot make the product without the license. You have process patent, you can make the same product but using a different process.
Okay.
So do you think that uh, for the world in general, this should be allowed? Patenting of medicines should be allowed.
Um, I think that it shouldn't, to be very honest, because when it's a drug that is of significance to the entire, say, for example, during COVID, there were a lot of vaccines that were developed, right? If they had stayed patented to one company itself and would not been able to, and it would not have been able to be manufactured by other manufacturing companies, that would have created a very negative impact because a lot of us would not have been able to be vaccinated, and the condition of the world that was at that time, it wouldn't have been able to improve. We wouldn't have been able to come out of the pandemic. So when it comes to any drug of that matter, when it is something that is of significant health impact, I think that it should not be patented. Even if it is patented, it shouldn't be for a duration of 20 years. That is very long because when manufacturing companies tend to patent these drugs, they tend to sell them at exorbitant rates. And a lot of people cannot actually afford these things. So, at least from a branded drug to a branded generic drug transition should be there. If not, just if the company should be able to give the government the ability to manufacture those drugs and not just keep it with themselves, even if they don't want to allow other companies to manufacture it.
Yeah, but the companies are saying that they are spending billions of dollars to manufacture one drug, so they have to recover the cost, otherwise they won't be able to manufacture any new drug.
Yeah, so that is why I believe that they can hold the patent. They It's not, so for example, if a company like GSK made a drug, it's not necessary that they have to allow Abbott and Sun Pharma to also manufacture the same drug, but at least giving the government the authority to build up a generic form of the drug so that it can cater to the masses is something that I believe should be done, especially if it's for a common ailment. If it's something for a condition like hypersensitivity pneumonitis, which is anyway very rare, if you're developing a drug for that, then it is okay to hold the patent for a while because not a lot of people would actually require it. And there are government schemes that can actually pay for those drugs if needed. Like in Maharashtra, for example, we have the Mahatma Phule scheme, which pays for these patented drugs if the person cannot afford them. So in such situations, it is fine. But for if it was like a pandemic situation, where maybe if they would have come up with a drug which would have helped cure COVID, in that situation, patenting the drug is not fine. So it comes to what condition is the drug being made for as well.
Even in the condition where you said that Maharashtra has a system where the government will pay for the drug or subsidize it, there will be a lot of
Hmm.
corruption. Won't there be corruption and but for poor persons to avail those schemes?
Sir, I couldn't hear anything after corruption.
I said that even in the case where the government is subsidizing,
Hmm.
you will need to pull string or pay money to get the drugs, right? In our system. So does it really help?
I mean, I have seen patients benefit from the scheme. I know that the government is accused of corruption a lot, and I'm not saying that they aren't corrupt. But when it comes to a hospital setup, at least in a metropolitan city like Mumbai, where I have worked, I know for a fact that the government has worked very effectively in providing good healthcare to people. So, for example, the hypersensitivity pneumonitis thing that I said, there is actually a very expensive drug which the patient needs a monthly injection of every month. She cannot afford it, but the government is actually sponsoring it for her. She doesn't have to pay a penny. She only has to provide a copy of her ration card, which states that she's actually not able to afford it. There's a specific category, the orange colored ration card holders. They are the ones who can actually benefit from the scheme, provided that they are listed. Obviously, they have to be listed for it. I know that there would be some corruption involved, but there is corruption involved everywhere. And if there is a scheme of the government that is actually helping people who need it, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Which brings us to the question, why do doctors generally recommend branded drugs which are maybe 10, 20 times costlier than a generic variant? What do you think
So,
about the medical nexus in this case?
okay. So doctors tend to prescribe drugs which are expensive only to people who they know can afford it. When you go in a government setup, in a prescription, they will never write a branded name. They will always write the generic name that they will get from the dispensary in the hospital itself. But when you're in a private setup, you tend to prescribe branded drugs, not solely because of the fact it is a contributor that there are medical representatives who come and give you incentives for it. That I'm not denying any of that. But also because some of the branded drugs have shown to have better efficacy and faster rate of action than the generic ones, simply because of the fact that the branded drugs have better processing and manufacturing facility. So even if you go to check the purity of the drug in a generic drug and in a branded drug, there will be a vast difference. Because the government cannot actually, the population is so large. We dispense paracetamol in kilos in a hospital. So the government cannot fund the processing to such a high level as a private company could. So taking that into account, doctors tend to prescribe private drugs. Also, when you look at branded drugs, even amongst different brands, different drugs tend to have better efficacy. If you take like a common drug called amoxicillin, it is a commonly used antibiotic. So there are two branded forms of it. There is one called Augmentin and one called Advil. Augmentin is the original drug that was formed. The inventor company sells Advent. The efficacy of Augmentin. So the efficacy of Augmentin has been proven to be better than Advent. So the processing units, the manufacturing methods also tend to affect the way the drug acts, which is why doctors tend to have their own preferences about the drugs that they prescribe. There is some ethical dilemma. There are some doctors who prescribe it based on incentives given by pharmaceutical companies, but a lot of doctors actually don't do that. They prescribe drugs based on their personal experience and backed by research.
See, finally, the branded drug and the generic drug have the same salt, right? So, what do you mean by purity of the salt may be different?
So when a drug is manufactured, it doesn't come in the form of a pill, right? There's a powder that goes through a lot of processing and then it turns into a pill. So during the processing of the powder to a pill, there has to be a lot of purification process that goes into it. Even as a pill, the coating that happens on the pill decides the rate of absorption of the drug. And if that is different, then the efficacy would be different. The time period in which the drug would start acting is also different. So those things vary when you're in a private setup and when you're in a government setup because the affordability of different compounds is different in these situations. Also, drugs which so when you so Okay, a medicine basically can be either in the form of a formulation or in the form of a thing called an active pharmaceutical ingredient. So an active pharmaceutical ingredient, when sold, is actually sold at different prices based on the purity level of the drug. So that is why generic drugs tend to have a lower purity, because they find a cheaper alternative. Whereas a branded drug will always look for better quality, because that is what they believe that the patient who is taking consuming these expensive drugs will come back for.
Whatever you have said about branded and generic, have you been brainwashed into saying all these things? Or are you sure? Because there is a Food and Drug Control Authority, right?
Yes,
And they have to approve and set standards for each and every drug that is being manufactured by any company. Without their
yes,
approval, the drug cannot go into the market.
yes.
So, are you
So
saying that different molecules, different refinement, without being safe, are being allowed?
I'm not saying they're not safe. I have not once said that the generic drugs are not safe to be consumed. Just the fact that so if I'm taking paracetamol, okay, it's a normal drug which we get as Crocin, Dolo, Crocin Plus, different manufacturing companies, different formulations. The time period that Dolo will take to act is shorter than what Crocin will take to act, which is shorter than what a generic paracetamol tablet will take to act. I am not saying in any sense that none of them would act. They will act, but the time taken for them to act will be different. And for a person who is ready to pay the extra 2 rupees or 3 rupees that comes for a Crocin tablet for a half an hour faster rate of faster action for the fever to go down, it is fine. If someone who is not able to afford it, then the generic one will also work, but it will take longer to work, or maybe the period of duration. So if I'm talking about an antibiotic, if I'm taking, say, an augmentin, maybe the action will be seen in 3 days for a 5-day course. But for a generic drug, it will take 5 days of the 5-day course. The duration of course will still remain the same. So I'm not saying that the generic drugs are wrong. I'm saying that the branded drugs are better.
Anybody else have any questions to ask? Yes, I, Shubham.
No, sir.
Sure.
There is a system of trial of medicine, right? Do you know that?
Sorry?
What happens when some drug is introduced in the market? There is a system
Yes.
of trial, right?
Yes.
Human trials. Can you explain that?
So when a drug is brought into the market, before it is brought into the market, there are trials that occur in the laboratory settings. So that are basically on maybe labs that will happen, maybe on like lab rats that will happen, or guinea pigs, depending on what the drug is and what the mechanism of action of it is intended. Once it clears that, then it comes into the process of human trials. So when it comes to human trials, it can be of two types. That's a step two, by the way. That can be of two types. First could be that it's a randomized control trial where the person who is conducting the trial does not know who is. So they'll give the drug and they'll give a dummy drug, and then they'll try, and at the end of the experiment they'll see what the efficacy of the drug was and what the action was, because a lot of the time people tend to heal without the action of a drug as well. To check that, we basically do a randomized control trial. Otherwise, it could be a control trial. In a control trial, you basically the person conducting the trial knows who is getting what drug, whether they're getting the dummy drug or whether they're getting the real drug. That's double blind. So that would the randomized control trial was on the double blinded trial. Now, after it goes through that, then the next stage is when we actually introduce it into the market. Now, when you're introducing into the market, that does not mean that the trial is over. That's the step three of the trial, where you actually see that in the larger population receiving the drug, what the action is, and if there is any AEFI, that's adverse event following the interaction with the drug, then you have to report that. And on the basis of that, a list is made as to whether the drug can be actually sold in the market or not as a long-term procedure. And once that is cleared, then we go into step four, where we actually just sell the drug to the people and the people can actually consume it. when it's released into the market as a licensed drug.
What is AEF? What is the full form? Adverse event?
Adverse adverse events following interaction with the drug.
Yeah, so when it is in trial stage and if a doctor is recommending it to a patient, the patient is supposed to be told, right, that it is in trial stage?
Yes, yes. So we take the patient consent as well as a separate consent form that the patient signs. But in a double-blinded study or even a single-blinded study, because the patient does not know whether they're getting the trial drug or not, we don't tell them if we're giving them the actual drug or if we're giving them the dummy drug. We just tell them that we are conducting a trial for which we are giving you this drug.
So if a doctor has told me that I am giving you a drug which is being found effective for a certain disease, and
Hmm.
when I search on Google, I find that it is still in trial stage. This
Hmm.
kind of thing is exceptional or is it regular?
Um, It could be that it's in a step 3 of the trial, whereby they are releasing it to the market, so you don't have to take particular consent for it, but it's not licensed yet. So it could be that it's there, but that's very rare for it to happen that the doctor's not telling you that still in the trial stage. Usually doctors do tell that it's still in the trial stage, whether it's licensed or not, if provided that they think that you can grasp the information. If I go to someone who doesn't know what a trial means, and if I try to explain the whole procedure to them, they might just get flabbergasted and not take the drug at all, which might be actually beneficial for them. So that is upon the doctor's discretion to decide whether they want to tell you or not. But if the doctor has not made you sign a consent form, it usually means that it's in the stage 3 of trial.
For the AEF, and when these drugs are in the trial stage, the doctors are supposed to fill out a report, right? As
Um,
to what were their observations uh, when they tried it on different patients.
it's not exactly a report, like an entire written report per se. There's a form that they have to fill in. Um, and that too, usually they have to fill it after the AEFI. If it's a drug that is working and there's no issues as such, then they might not have to fill it, at least in the government setup. In a private setup, they might be asked because the pharmaceutical company conducting the research might be asking them to. In a government setup, they don't necessarily have to fill it unless there's an adverse event.
Because I found doctors, the signing of the reports which are pre-filled by the medical representatives of these private companies or drug manufacturers. How ethical is that?
They are signing forms, like prescriptions that are pre-filled by the medical
No, not the
representatives.
prescription. The effect of the drug that they found on the patient is that is prepared by the medical representatives at the company's behest, and they just sign it without even reading it.
So that could be because they're already briefed about what's written in the form. So if the form says that everything is fine and there are no adverse events and the XYZ reaction was observed or XYZ improvement was observed, and the doctor has already been briefed about what is written, then the doctor needs not necessarily always read the form again, provided that again there's no adverse event.
All that you have been saying over the last 10-15 minutes as that everything seems to be quite all right in the medical fraternity, in the drug company. Then why is there so much adverse reports about these?
Why is there so much?
Adverse reports about medical ethics? If
I
everything is
mean,
so fine, everything is so controlled,
I am talking based on my experience and based on what I have seen. There, I am not saying that there are no doctors that are not corrupt, that are not money minded. There are. I mean, there's an institute that I know of where I have experienced this, where the doctor has prescribed me unnecessary tests just for the sake of money making because they had tie up with the laboratory. So there are doctors like that, but not all doctors are like that. So while there are some flaws in the medical system, most doctors who have that ethical uh, thing in them, they tend to not act in a way that will go against the majority of the public and the patients they are treating, especially because doctors who continue to practice in the field know that it is a noble profession. So they go in with the mindset that they will be serving people. So I feel that there are some people who tend to be frustrated with the medical life, who want to make money now because it has been 35 years since they've been studying, and they don't want to continue the turmoil or struggle anymore. They might be going through wrong channels, but not all doctors are like that.
Acha, tell me something. If a person has a heart blockage
Hmm.
and he's prescribed angioplasty,
He's prescribed
an angioplasty,
angioplasty, okay.
hmm, and then he goes to another doctor and he says there's nothing wrong at all with his heart, he doesn't even need blood pressure medication. How do you justify this huge funding from the same report?
To be honest, it is very hard that one person is prescribing an angioplasty and the other is prescribing no problem at saying no problem at all. Because if the patient went in to get tests done, it might be because of some symptoms that the patient is facing. And if the doctor saying that there is nothing to be done at all is not looking into that, then it counts as medical negligence on his part. That being said, there is a chance that the patient who has a block in the heart might not necessarily need an angioplasty. There are also certain drugs which, if you come in the window period, can be given to treat it, like streptokinase. So maybe that I'm not saying that the doctor is completely ethical, but it depends on the patient's symptoms, on the patient's condition. If the patient comes in with a chest pain radiating to the arm, breathlessness, and the doctor says that you don't even need BP medication, then that is definitely medical negligence, irrespective of what the reports say.
The actual fact of the matter is that the doctors who didn't give him drugs, they are the best in Asia. And the doctors who prescribed angioplasty, they are well-known doctors, but not the best. It is actually the reverse.
So mistakes can be made by anyone. Maybe the
This kind of
doctor.
mistake,
Yes, I mean, we are also humans, and most doctors are usually overworked. These mistakes do happen, and it will definitely count as medical negligence. I'm not justifying the mistake that the other doctor might have made. Either of the two doctors might have made, but it is possible. So I wouldn't say that this person is right or this person is wrong entirely. We all are entitled to our own clinical judgment. But that being said, finding out whether there is some money making process behind it or whether the patient is actually doing well or not, there are a lot of factors to consider. There can't be a definitive statement that he is right and he is wrong in this.
if you had to go for further studies in medicine, what field would you choose?
If I had to go in further studies, I would choose medicine.
Help us understand what is medicine.
So medicine is basically general medicine, whereby you treat variable situations that uh, maybe like a cold, cough, flu, diarrhea, any fever, typhoid, malaria, dengue, all of these come under the treatment of medicine, as well as something that ranges from a kidney failure, a liver failure, a heart failure. These come under the pretense of a medicine doctor, like a general medicine practitioner.
So why this field?
Simply because it was interesting to me. So when you come to a, a medical college, you usually have two sectors. There's one anatomy surgery sector and there's one physiology medicine sector. So the anatomy surgical part of it is very rote learning based. You have to know where a part of the body is. You have to know what procedure has to be done. You have to know where the cut has to be made. When it comes to medicine and physiology, it's very understanding based. So you have to, once you understand the mechanism, you don't have to actually rote learn anything. It's like a flow chart that goes through in your brain. So that's and it's very interesting. There's always new things that come up in medicine. So that is why if I were to continue MBBS, I would have done medicine.
Okay, a very basic question. What are the parts of the alimentary canal from the mouth to the anus?
Okay, so the alimentary canal basically starts with your oral cavity, the teeth, the tongue, the palate, the soft and the hard palate, then goes up to the esophagus. Then from the esophagus, it enters into the stomach. The stomach basically has the opening into the duodenum into the jejunum and the ileum. The duodenum, jejunum, and ileum together make the small intestine. From there, it goes into the colon. The colon basically is a large intestine. From there, it goes into the cecum, from the cecum to the rectum, and then outside to the anus.
Like, I think you are wasting your time here. You would be a very good doctor. Why don't you reconsider your decision?
I have given it a lot of thought, and I am proud to be a doctor, but that is not a field that I want to continue in. It is not just the fact that I want to do an MBA because of the fact that there was marketing and the whole aspect, but also because I do not see myself as a doctor in the future. Even if I am currently practicing as one, I don't want to live my life as a doctor.
Why not?
I simply because seeing patients in pain is not something that I am emotionally strong enough to deal with. I thought that I was, but when you see someone pass away in front of you, it's not something that's very easy to digest, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I realized during my internship that it's not mine either.
Yeah, but the corporate world that you are wanting to enter now may look very rosy from outside, but inside it is also very unethical.
Sorry, I might look very.
Want to enter the corporate world now, but that is also very unethical inside.
So I
At
understand that
least,
a corporate.
at least in medicine, you have the comfort of helping people. In corporate
Yeah,
world, you have to be very ruthless and heartless. If I may say.
so I understand that most people in the corporate world are considered to be ruthless and heartless, but maybe I can bring in a human touch and a touch of empathy into the world that is considered to be so ruthless and heartless.
Acha, when we were discussing this product and generics and all that, I
Hmm.
find that there are companies which are making the same medicine under two different brand names and selling one at 10 times the price of the other. How do you justify that? Same company, making the same medicine for the same problem under two different names and selling one at 10 or 20 times the cost of the other. How do you justify that?
I personally have not come across it. Maybe that is the same drug, but in a different form. So if the so drugs can also be manufactured as a sustained release tablets or something maybe a subdermal patch, something maybe an sublingual drug, something maybe an oral drug, something maybe a pessary. So the mode of introduction will also vary, which it will also depend change the price point because the rate of absorption from different modes is also different, which also affects whether their action is going, how fast they are going to act. Another thing could be that it's possible that the drug you're talking about could be sold as a cheaper form in itself and in an expensive form as a combination drug. So we tend to actually the pharmaceutical companies actually do this a huge favor for us. If you want to give a combination drug, we just have to prescribe one tablet instead of asking the patient to take two separate tablets at say 5 minute interval or something, which increases patient compliance, which actually helps the patient in the longer run because they don't. It's it's far easier to forget to take one tablet and take just the other one than just taking that one tablet every hour, like every at the same hour every day.
Yeah, but the government has been sort of banning many combination drugs. What's the reason for that? It's so beneficial.
So not sometimes over a period of time, we tend to see that certain combination drugs do not either have the same efficacy as was promised or was seen in the initial research papers, or we tend to see that they have longer term harmful effects because when you license a drug and bring it into the market, you don't know what is going to happen 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line because the research does not last that long. But eventually, when you're giving the drug, when you're seeing the effects on a larger population, the long term effects, then in that situation, the government might actually retract the combination drug, saying that, okay, it's not actually useful, it's harming the patients.
Give us one reason that you should not be selected.
I should not be selected. I think that if there have been any way where I have disrespected you, or if you feel that maybe I am not, honestly, the only reason I can think of is if you don't think that I am not qualified. But I believe that I can thrive. I am very determined. So I know that once I get into the PGP program, I will thrive and I will come out as someone who will do good as a manager and ultimately will probably help be useful to my father's business as well. So unless you think that under your discretion that I will not be a good fit, I cannot find any reason as to why I can't be here.
By saying that I could be rejecting you because I find you disrespectful, you are putting a question mark on my professionalism.
Sorry?
You said that you may not be selected because I may feel that you have disrespected me.
That was wrong. That was wrong for me to say. I'm sorry. That was something that I shouldn't have mentioned.
Anybody else has any queries, questions about what Smita said during the whole process?
Nope.
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Please give her a feedback. What did you feel about her? Was there anything where she could have improved? Yes. Give your feedback, whether positive, negative, neutral, whatever it is.
Sir, she was overall very good. I don't think she
Yeah.
is lacking somewhere.
In terms
Yeah,
of
very good.
positive, like I think that like her knowledge of her graduation studies was pretty in depth, and that shows like a lot of commitment. So I feel like at least when it came to medicines, even if like the views did not completely match, like she did have an answer, and it came across as she's aware of things that happen and her course material and all of it.
Okay. Yeah, Ayush.
Uh, I think that it was very much fine overall because she was able to answer pretty much all the questions with a lot of information, and hence I think it was fine.
I also think the same. It is very rare for a person's first interview to be this good, but don't get overconfident because it was mostly about your profession. So you are
Yes, sir.
with your comfort zone. So next time we'll not be talking about medicine per
Yes,
se.
sir.
Huh. But you are
Yes, sir.
pretty good. You have defended your fraternity very well, which I didn't expect. You did not flutter at any place. But somewhere I felt that you are uh, depicting the medical fraternity in too much of a positive light. The
Okay.
angioplast thing, I don't think there can be such a error in judgment. Like you just,
I've actually seen this happen where a patient has passed away because the people thought it was acidity in the casualty, which is why, and it is, I know it wasn't their fault because sometimes the clinical presentation is very similar, but that was the only reason why I said it because I've seen it happen.
no, no. If if you are assuming it is acidity, that is an assumption. But in case of angioplasty, there will be a report, right? There will be
Yes,
blockages seen.
yes,
There will
true.
be a test done. So can a heart specialist make such an error of judgment that he will recommend an angioplasty where the guy doesn't even require a drug? The specialist where he went to later in Bombay, they told him, "You've got nothing wrong with you. Just jump out of the window or we'll throw you out."
I mean, if the person is suggesting an angioplasty, I think that the person who said that he's normal is the person who is probably at fault because when you say that a person needs angioplasty, there is not just one person taking a call, there's also a radiologist who's taking the call. There's also a team of junior doctors who have actually referred him to the cardiologist saying that he probably needs something. So someone who is saying that no, he's absolutely fine, maybe someone who's in the wrong with this,
Yeah,
even if he's a senior doctor.
uh, but the doctors asked him and he said, "Yes, we are going for reunion and I'm able to dance for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour without getting exhausted."
That happens. That
Maybe
is
you have a blockage.
asymptomatic. Yeah, asymptomatic. So when you say blockage, it's called myocardial infarction, and asymptomatic myocardial infarction are known as silent MIs, which tend to happen, especially if the patient is a female. They tend to have no symptoms, and they later find out that the patient had an MI. Sometimes they just collapse on the ground. You don't know what
So
happened. You
should
take an
I
E.
so should I
Sorry.
ask this friend of mine to go for another opinion? Because
Oh,
he has come back. He has come
this is
back from
actually
Mumbai
a friend of
without.
yours.
Yeah, it happened with him. He was suggested an angioplasty in Kolkata. He was very nervous. Went to Bombay, went to the best doctor in Asia in Bombay. Two of them, in
Hmm.
fact, and both of them said that there's nothing wrong with you. We are on the fifth floor. You just walk out from here, or we throw you out the window.
Yeah, then I think so. It depends on how long has it been, because sometimes if a clot is very small, it might not actually cause that much damage. So it depends on the size and the artery that the clot is actually blocking. So if it's a big artery, you definitely need an angioplasty. If it's a small artery and if the patient presented with symptoms and then it passed away eventually, it's possible that the area around that artery died. It happens that a part of the heart died. That being said, if it's a very small artery and only a small portion of it has actually atrophied, you don't need an angioplasty later on. Maybe the doctor who then prescribed the angioplasty in that case would have suspected a bigger clot, or would have suspected that the clot will actually migrate to a bigger artery and cause a problem. That is why he might have suggested it. And by the time he reached the other heart specialist, the heart specialist might have seen that the course of the MI has gotten completed, which is why he must have been like, okay, ab kuch nahi karna hai. So if it has been a
Who
while
is
since
who is
all
who
these
is the
things
most
happened,
famous cardiologist in Mumbai?
I am actually not aware of that. I'll just check and let you know.
Okay, fine. And about that same company making two different drugs, which I said, it's the fact. I'll send you a screenshot on that.
Okay, I'll just check that, because I actually didn't know that this is happening per se.
No, no, I'll send you the screenshot. Let me find out, then I'll send. I think
Yes,
overall it was a pretty good interview. So we'll focus more on personality traits and other stuff in your later
yes,
interviews, like strength, weakness, and all that.
yes.
The other three of you who were here, you have any questions regarding this interview? This interview lasted for almost 45 minutes. Your usual interview is 15 minutes, okay? So in
Okay.
45 minutes, we have covered only medicine mostly,
Yes, sir.
apart from few personal or personality questions. So almost equivalent of the interview. Yeah, Ayush, Shubham, and Rana, you have any queries on the questions that were asked? Nikta?
Yeah, like I just want to
No,
know,
sir.
is it normal to go this in depth about like things we might have studied in graduation?
I didn't go into any depth.
Okay, maybe then perhaps I'm not from medical, so it might have seemed very technical to me
Which
then.
question?
I guess.
Which question did you feel was getting into depth?
I
Uh,
think it was the one I think where she was naming some parts of the things, and okay, some things might not have been very technical, but I think it was very related to like the current affairs. Like I think the drug thing that you mentioned, the same drug. I think even I saw it on some social media platform and all, but like I just asked because it might not be that I'm so in touch with something I might have studied years ago or the latest news on that. So just out of curiosity, I wanted to know if
No, if
they
you have normally what you have studied in college, they ask you about your
Mhm.
favorite subject or what you were good at, and they
Okay,
ask you about
okay,
that. So even if you
okay,
have 2 or 3 years of work experience, you need to be thorough with at
Mhm.
least one of your college subjects.
Got it, got it, got it. Yeah.
Yes, Shubham,
No, sir. Queries.
are you any questions?
not really, sir.
How did you find the interview?
What did you say, sir?
Then how did you find the interview? Hello. Yes, are you?
Hello.
How would you rate Snigdha?
Yeah, sir. So I think the way Snigdha put everything and the way she was able to answer all the questions and able to talk on it for a few minutes of or some time was uh, sh- was showing that she was very good at what she has learned, and hence I believe the entire interview was very nice.
Okay, we'll meet again tomorrow then, 8:45 or 9ish. Okay, I'll
There'll
I'll
be a class on
let you.
Sundays as well.
Yeah, why not?
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Take
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Good night.
Okay,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
night, sir.